Random access memory. Without it, the very device used to watch this video could not function. Almost all of it comes from three companies: Samsung, SK Hynix, Micron. Between them, they control roughly 90% of the memory on Earth. In the last 4 years, the price of that memory increased over 700%. You've been led to believe it's due to AI. The data centers need it. Nobody saw this coming. This is just the new normal. The same three companies controlling the memory used in every device on Earth are the same three companies fixing the price of memory 3 separate times over the past 20 years. The first time, they pled guilty, and executives went to federal prison, slapped with 6-figure fines. One of the men who went to federal prison the first time for fixing the price of the exact memory sitting in your device right now did not even lose his job over it. Samsung promoted him to run an entire continent. Twice. The second accusation, they beat it on a technicality. 2026 marks the trilogy, the revenge of the Sith, the return of the king. The prevailing narrative suggests this is a shortage. This is not a shortage. This is a rerun. 3 parts: the crime, the cover-up, and the return. This 3-part series reveals who did it, who they promoted, and where your tax dollars went. To understand the DRAM crisis today, we have to go back over 2 decades. The year is 2002. In 2002, a pair of companies walked into the United States Department of Justice with a complaint. That pair was Dell and Gateway. Memory prices are inflated and it is eating their margins. The DOJ opens an investigation under the Sherman Antitrust Act. What they find is not a theory. It is a cartel, a real one. 5 manufacturers coordinating the price of DRAM in 2002. Watch the dominoes fall. Infineon pleads guilty, $160 million fine. SK Hynix pleads guilty, $185 million fine. Samsung pleads guilty, $300 million fine. At that time, the second largest criminal antitrust fine in American history. Elpida pleads $84 million. Running total, $731 million in fines. But companies do not go to prison. People do. 18 executives were charged. 15 were convicted. So let's bring up the wall of shame. After all, they've earned it. From Infineon, Rudd Corwin, Peter Schaefer, Gunter Hefner, Heinrich Florian, 4 to 6 months each in federal prison, plus $250,000 fines. From Hynix, the company you now call SK Hynix, same company, new name, Dae-Soo Kim, Chae Kyung Chun, Kun Chul Soo, Chun Yub Choi, Ching Ding Pao. Sorry, that's not one. Prison, each one of them. From Samsung, 6 executives pled guilty. We're going to spend real time on these because this story deserves its own chapter. 2 of the facts about the 2002 cartel explain everything happening right now in 2026. Fact 1, one company did not pay a fine, Micron. Micron was the informant. It walked into the DOJ, turned in the entire cartel, and got amnesty. The rat. Remember that word. The company that snitched on the cartel in 2002 is a defendant in 2026. Fact 2. Remember Elpida, the Japanese company that pleaded guilty? In 2013, Micron bought them. So a convicted member of the original cartel now lives inside Micron. The industry did not clean itself up, it consolidated. Dozens of companies became 3. And those 3 are 2 convicted price fixers, plus the informant who turned them in. Meet Sun-Woo Lee, 2006, senior manager of DRAM at Samsung. He pleaded guilty in a United States federal court to fixing the price of the exact memory in the machine you are using right now. 8 months in federal prison and $250,000 fine. 2009, Samsung made him the president of Samsung Germany. 2014, president of Samsung Europe. They didn't fire a man that went to prison for price fixing. They gave him a continent twice. And he wasn't alone. Il-eun Kim, vice president of marketing for Samsung's memory division, 14 months. At the time, the longest prison sentence ever handed to a foreign price fixer on American soil. That record belongs to a Samsung executive. 6 Samsung executives pleaded guilty. A 7th was indicted and fled. This is not a bad apple. This is a hiring profile. So in 2026, when the lawsuit alleges Samsung went back and rehired people who did this the first time, do not act surprised. To this company, a federal conviction for price fixing is not a scandal. It is a qualification. That is the end of episode 1. They got caught. The system worked. Hold that feeling. It does not last. Now, that was 2002, DOJ investigation. 2006, the convictions landed. Fast forward to 2016 to 2018. DRAM prices nearly triple. Sound familiar? A law firm, Huggins Berman, sues the same 3 companies, Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron. Same accusation, price fixing. And they lose. The district court dismisses it. The Ninth Circuit upholds the dismissal in 2022. The reason is a phrase you need to know. Conscious parallelism. Here's what it means. In a market with only 3 players, everyone can watch everyone. So when all 3 cut the supply at the same time, they will each say they did it on their own, independently. No agreement, just 3 companies reading the same market and reaching the same answer. And here's the uncomfortable truth. That is legal. Parallel greed is legal. The court ruled the cuts were more consistent with parallel behavior than with a conspiracy. And the line that should grind your teeth, the court said if there were no conspiracy at all, the companies would probably make the same public statements anyway. So the question is never, did the price go up? The question is, did they agree to stifle the market? And in 2018, the plaintiffs could not get inside to prove it. The bad guys won the middle chapter. Episode 2, The Empire Wins. Now, the people who tell you coordination is impossible to prove, that it's just a conspiracy theory, need to explain the chicken. Broiler chicken. The most boring commodity in America. For years, the producers swore the price moves were just the market, just parallel behavior, until the Department of Justice got inside. In 2021, Pilgrim's Pride pleaded guilty to fixing the price of chicken and paid $170 million. Another $75 million to settle with the buyers. The conspiracy ran from 2012 to 2017. Coordination in a concentrated commodity market is not a tinfoil hat. It's a rap sheet. In the past decade alone, the commodities of beef, turkey, pork, and poultry all settled multi-million-dollar antitrust conspiracy litigation by fixing the price of their product. So when someone tells you 3 memory makers could not possibly be coordinating, ask them why the chicken could. And hold on to the chicken. It has a second lesson, the darkest one, and I'm saving it for last. So the shield, the protective barrier between the DRAM market and the consumer, held in 2018 because nobody could get inside and actually try the case. The question for 2026 is whether anything has changed. 2 things have. 2 facts that the 2018 case never had, both very hard to explain as innocent parallel behavior. Fact 1. Micron shut down Crucial. Crucial was Micron's consumer memory brand, the one that sells to you. And according to the complaint, they shut it down at the most profitable price point in its history. Read that again. They killed the brand that sells to regular people while it was printing money. A company does not walk away from its most profitable moment unless something else is going on. Fact number 2. The complaint alleges these companies went back and rehired the very executives who went to prison for the cartel the first time. Allegedly. Let me show you what 4 years did to your money. Apple raised the price of the cheapest MacBook Pro by $400 to $1999. On the same day this lawsuit was filed, Microsoft raised Xbox prices for the third time, which is the first time in any console generation that prices increased. The Series X is now $750 without a disk drive. The 2 terabyte model, gone, discontinued. Microsoft's reason in writing, console memory costs are up more than 2.5 times, and they expect another doubling by the fall of 2027. Hardware does not get more expensive halfway through its life. This did 3 times. And a whole gaming PC, Valve's new Steam machine, landed at $1,049 and still sold out in 10 minutes. Micron just crossed $1 trillion in market valuation on quarterly revenue of $41 billion, more than 4 times the year before. SK Hynix stock is up over 800% in a year. It passed Samsung to become the most valuable company in South Korea. Your memory got 7 times more expensive. Their stock went vertical. That is not 2 stories. It is 1 story seen from both ends. The money left your wallet and it arrived somewhere. I'm going to follow it all the way there. But first, the official story. You've heard it 100 times, so let me play it back and take it apart. Lenovo stood on a stage and said memory prices will likely never come back down. This is the new normal. Where have we heard that phrase before? Microsoft said the cost would double again inside a year. When a company tells you the price will never come down, that is not a weather report. That is a company telling you to get comfortable being robbed. In the words of one analyst, this gives off buy my bags at the top energy. So let me put my cards on the table, because I'm not a journalist, and I don't make a living guessing. I spent years in manufacturing quality management, aerospace, medical devices, regulated industries. If you get the forecast wrong, the supply chain experiences constraint. Here's what that job actually is. You run forecast analysis constantly. You model demand, you track lead times, you track on-time delivery, you track disruptions in the supply chain down to the raw material level. You buy material ahead of the curve so the line never stops. That's the entire discipline. It is not exotic. It's a Tuesday. So when the 3 most sophisticated manufacturers on Earth tell me that a multi-year, multi-trillion-dollar AI build-out announced in public on earnings calls years in advance caught them by surprise, they did not get surprised. They saw it coming the same way I would have, the same way anybody with an MRP system, an ERP system, and a forecast would have. They saw the demand and they made a choice. Now here's the standard, because this is where the whole thing turns. Seeing it coming proves the shortage was deliberate. It does not by itself prove it was coordinated. Hold on to that distinction. It's gonna matter. One more receipt. Micron locked in 16 multi-year supply agreements, roughly $100 billion in committed revenue through 2030. You do not sign 5-year contracts for a thing that surprised you. You sign them because you can manipulate the chessboard. The shortage is deliberate. Here's how the machine actually runs, because the same memory from the same 3 companies gets sold 2 completely different ways. If you are an AI hyperscaler, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, a company building data centers, you get a contract, a 3 to 5 year long-term agreement, locked volume, locked price. You are protected from market fluctuation. Now here's what it looks like if you are not in that club. And this should make you sit up, because the company I'm about to describe is not a small fish. Valve Corporation, a multi-billion-dollar company. Valve went to buy memory for the Steam machine. Here's what their own engineer said happened on the record. There is no contract. The memory makers hand them a price every 30 days. Take it or leave it. And if Valve says no, they get cut off. The memory dealers will never talk to them again. So read that back. Prices now, 30 days to respond, or get the fuck out. To Valve. If a real monopoly can do that to a multi-billion-dollar company, what chance did you, the consumer, ever have? So who soaked up the supply? Follow the demand and name it, because none of this is secret. Sam Altman, OpenAI, signed a letter of intent to spend roughly $1.4 trillion on memory and compute, then quietly walked it back. Elon Musk's xAI is building data centers that eat memory by the warehouse. The hyperscalers signed up for the bulk of that new capacity before it was even built. Now, I'm going to be precise, because precision is the entire point of this channel. I'm not telling you these men are in a room with Samsung fixing prices. I have no evidence of that, and neither does anybody else. What I'm telling you is simpler and unfortunately worse. The interests of the memory cartel mirror that of an actual cartel. The buyers want the memory. The sellers want the margin. And your market is the one that gets starved, so the whales get fed. Nobody has to conspire. The incentives do the work on their own. So maybe that's all this is. 3 companies reading the same market, each acting in its own interest. No crime, just capitalism. It's a little ugly. That would be a comforting story. Except these 3 have a history, and that history is the reason the comforting story does not hold. To me, the question is obvious. In 2002, the government put these people in prison. Where is the government now? It switched sides. It decided to join the winning team. In 2002, the DOJ hunted the cartel. Today, the state is the cartel's biggest sponsor, and I can show you every piece of it on the record. The CHIPS Act. American tax money is underwriting Micron's $200 billion domestic buildout, new fabs in Idaho, a massive plant in New York. South Korea is doing the same thing, a $520 billion plan with Samsung and SK Hynix. Subsidies on both sides of the Pacific for the 3 companies accused of starving your market. Export controls. The United States blocks Chinese memory makers from buying the equipment they need to compete at the leading edge. The complaint says it flat out. When the big 3 restrict supply, there is nobody else that can step in. The Trump administration helped build that wall. And Micron's CEO, Sanjay Mehrotra, flew to China with the President of the United States. When the government writes subsidy checks and builds trade walls for 3 companies with 2 prior price fixing convictions between them, that is not a free market. It is a protected one. I do not care whose name is on the check. A spade is a spade. And that is worse than conspiracy. A conspiracy is illegal and hidden. This is legal and public. In 24 years, the United States government went from putting these executives in prison to funding their factories. And the people running these companies today, Samsung's chip division, co-CEO Jun Young Hyun, SK Hynix, Kwak No Jung, Micron, Sanjay Mehrotra, none of them have been charged with anything. The 2026 suit is civil, and it is against the companies, not the men. I'm not calling them criminals. I'm telling you who is holding the wheel while the pattern runs a 3rd time. So let's just say the plaintiffs win. They get inside, they find the agreement, they prove it. What actually happens to these people? Let me show you. Using this industry's own history, what accountability looks like. The maximum sentence for an individual under the Sherman Act is 10 years. Sounds serious. Here's the reality. The median prison sentence for an antitrust offender, according to the Sentencing Commission's own data, is about 6 months. The median has never gone over a year. 6 months against hundreds of billions of dollars. And remember the chicken. Here in its 2nd lesson, the one that I promised you, when the DOJ tried to put the chicken executives in prison, it failed. 1 guilty plea, 5 acquittals, 11 defendants who had every charge dropped. A judge threw out all 294 pieces of the government's evidence. The company paid, the humans walked. That is the template. The company writes the checks that looks enormous and is actually a rounding error. And the executives are okay. We already know they're okay. Sun Wu Lee did 8 months and was rewarded a continent. And here's the final insult. The thing that kills any fantasy that this lawsuit lowers your prices, even if they did lose, even if they pay, no court can force these companies to make cheap memory for you. They will do what Micron already did to Crucial, leave the consumer market, sell only to the data centers on those nice 5-year pricing contracts. A guilty verdict does not lower your RAM prices. It just confirms why they are high. Let's put this back together in one breath. Ultimate conclusion. 3 companies control 90% of the memory in every device you own, bar none. 2 of them have already pled guilty to fixing these exact prices. Executives went to prison, and at least 1 was promoted for it. They beat the second case by arguing you cannot prove the difference between a cartel and a coincidence. And now, with the government subsidizing them, the competition walled off, and AI demand handing them the perfect cover story, they are doing it a 3rd time. Your memory as a consumer is up 700%. Their stock is up 800. The wealth did not vanish. It moved from your wallet to theirs. Foreseen, deliberate, and manufactured. This was not an accident. This was a choice. And they have no remorse because it worked the first 2 times. This AI boom and spike in demand is not a surprise to anybody. This is a manufactured crisis. I spent a career in manufacturing, understanding procurement, quality, operations, supply chain, and I know what a forecast actually looks like. If you reject the narrative, I want to hear from you in the comments. Describe your working experience and how this impacts your daily life, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching.